Mrs. Lee, Mrs. Simpson, Mrs. Donaldson, down, so we can see the other side. It's going to feel a little bit wonky for some people because I'm going to shut off some lights. Hey everybody, so these three very patient people here thought that they were going to present at 6 o'clock and then leave the grown-ups to do grown-up things, but clearly that hasn't happened. They sunk each other's battleships and now they're ready to talk. So every month the school board, or not every month, but most months the school board asks teachers to bring students and student work and present this cool stuff that we've been doing. So this month, the fourth graders and I decided we would like to come. So I'm Joan Heisler. For those of you who don't know me in here, there aren't very many of you in here, but everybody does. I teach fourth grade. This is Max and Henry, and they are some of my most awesome fourth grade students. So we want to talk to you today about some science that we've been doing. In education, if you pay attention to education at all, a lot of times lately, one of the buzzwords is competency-based education. So this idea of students reaching different competencies, and they progress or move along these progressions. So I've been spending a lot of time with some other science teachers talking about competencies, science competencies, and what we want kids to be able to do at different levels. So, and then in kind of making this move to understanding and measuring kids against competencies and using this idea of competency-based education, we kind of change the way we're thinking about things, and we don't necessarily just teach content. In science, we're looking at science practices. So one of the practices that I focused on with these guys is building a model, and this idea that you can build a model that represents a natural system or represents something in nature. And then the other thing is this idea that good scientists use evidence to engage in argument. So we did a whole unit, we kind of did this whole life science unit where we started learning about the human body, and we did a big focus on the skeleton, and then we started comparing the human body to other animals. And we looked at other animal skeletons, and then we had one of our most awesome Tin Mountain teachers come in and do some investigations with us about animal skulls and what they tell us about animals. And we did some investigations about, what else we do? Animal furs and animal senses. So these guys took all of that information, and then that was the end of the unit, and I had to measure them some way. So I had to create something called a performance task. And in a performance task, I give the students a scenario. So here's the scenario. The astrobiology and biological science students at Florida Tech are developing a biodome that can be placed on Mars. They're including different habitats from around the country and want to determine what kind of animals could live in these environments. They're asking teachers and students to help with this. It's up to us to help them understand what helps animals survive in those habitats. So we went a step beyond survive because I really wanted to get to this idea of making a good argument based on the evidence that they had. So we've talked about animals needing to thrive in their environments. And we talked about that thrive means not just survive, but to survive and flourish and survive well and be happy. So their job was to create a visual of their animal, and that's the model, and then to label their visual using specific details and describes the traits that help it survive and thrive. So these guys, well, I'm going to flip through the slideshow, and when we get to their animals, they're going to read you a little paragraph, a little deeper description of their animal so that you can kind of hear the arguments that they use to create their animal. But in the meantime, I actually have some connections at Florida Tech. So I reached out to astrobiology senior there. Don't ask me what astrobiology is. I know that it has to do with life and it has to do with space. And she's going on to vet school next year to be a marine vet. So how that all works, I'm not exactly sure, but she's, as I told the kids, we get snot. So I sent the pictures to her, and she gave the kids feedback. So you'll see when we get to their slides, I'll read their feedback, her feedback. So it's really cool for them to get feedback from a real scientist about their animals. So the first animal, the first habitat that we have for our animals is a field or meadow habitat. And I'll show you a couple of my feet. Max is up first, right? Is that right? So here's Max's animal. Max, go ahead and read yours, and then I'll read what Christina wrote.
I created a measle. A measle has a bunch of bones in its spine, so it's a fast and agile animal. Measle have claws. It lives in groups and digs. It hibernates in the winter. It has a small body. When any animal eats it, it probably won't eat one again because it tastes spoiled. Measle are brown, which means they're really good at camouflaging. If anything gets too close to it, it'll try and stun them by using its front paws to hit them and then runs. Their eyes are a little wider set than humans, so they have a wider range of view. A measle is perfect for its field environment.
And here's what Christina said to him. Prey animals often have many defense mechanisms. I love how the measle tastes bad, blends into the dirt around it, and lives underground. All of these aspects make it hard for predators to eat. Its flexible spine, large feet, and weight allow it to escape the predators that do see it. Many prey have side-facing eyes to help it see predators coming when it's grazing. Where are the eyes on the measle? And Max answered that question, right? And love how it has a flexible spine. This probably helps them cuddle up with their buddies in their holes for the winter. Overall, great animal. We'll go through a couple of others. Here are a couple of other fieldlets. A couple of other field animals. One called the alpha, the Bernoti, and then we get to the river or pond habitat. And I think we have another one of those, right? So here are a couple of the river and pond animals until we get to axes.
Excuse me? Oh, I see that you have I apologize for interrupting, but back here it was very hard to hear the young man, and you have a microphone. Would it be possible for you to hold it just so maybe we can hear a little clearer?
You feel all right using the microphone?
Yeah.
All right, come on.
Thank you.
We're used to just projecting as best as we can to a teacher standing in the back, so.
I created a mammal called the furmer. It is a cute but
Is it
ferocious.
on? Oh, wait, Mrs. Weeder is going to fix whatever needs fixing because she's amazing.
Hello.
No challenge.
Now I created a mammal called
No?
Good to test this out now because we're going to need it for.
See, I told you Mrs. Weeder would fix it.
Well, maybe Max should just talk really loud, because we can.
Max, why don't you stand right in the middle and talk really loud then, okay? As loud as you can.
Thank you.
I created a mammal called the furmer. It is a cute but ferocious mammal with many interesting traits. It builds its den below the water by using its digging claws to carve tunnels into the river embankment. Once it has of the tunnel, it will start using the fur it sheds weekly to line its dens and cushion the nursery. It is very hard to hunt because it extends its neck up above the water so its head pokes out. Then it will rotate its head in a circle while moving its ears to check for any sound of predators. Its eyes are on the side of its head so that it can see in all directions, and it has sonic level hearing. The predators of the adult fervor are large land-dwelling carnivorous predators. Weasel-like rodents will crawl into the fervor's cave system, find the nursery, and eat the babies.
So here's what Christina said to Max. I love the idea of limbs that extend to change the body shape based on its situation. The ears, eyes, and head mobility adaptations make this prey very aware of its surrounding. What animals hunt this one? Why is it so aware of its surrounding? What predators are hunting it? Why? What makes the animal vulnerable to the predators? How is the beak helpful? What does this animal eat? Log the tail, great animal. Here's another pond-dwelling animal that Nora made. Nora's hurt herself yesterday at skiathon, so she can't be here with us tonight. She was going to present her animal. The coolest thing about Nora's is that it has coarse fur, and that has coarse barbed fur so that algae can stick to it to help it camouflage. And
Joe?
here's another, yeah.
Forgive me for interrupting here. Hopefully this will be a good civics lesson for you boys. We need to,
Can we have one more kid say theirs?
absolutely.
Because they waited a really long time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But we're
So
legally obligated to.
but at 7, right?
At 7, yeah.
Yeah, so
Well,
we
there's something we need to do.
we just
before.
have Henry's to
At
do.
the very least, Joe,
Yeah.
if I may,
Yeah.
just because we are in a legal meeting right now,
Yeah.
technically we're in non-public right now, so I would just make a motion to come out of non-public.
Second.
That's all I need to
Good,
do.
good.
Now we're back in the real meeting.
All right, good. So Jerry's here. All right. So, so now we are in animals that live in an alpine habitat. Henry, really loud.
My animal lives in an alpine habitat, so it has adaptations that help it thrive up high where it is cold and rough. It has strong back legs to help with balance. Because of the rocks in the environment, it has a barbed tail like an ankylosaurus, and its strong claws can excavate rocks with speed. Its thick pelt is excellent for the cold climate. The strong jaws are good for gnawing on roots and eating small insects. It digs tunnels to live in and needs a strong sense of smell to navigate the tunnels because its eyesight isn't the best. These creatures are built for the alpine environment.
Excellent. Other ones as we go through the forest habitat animals. So the kids were really, really invested and engaged in this unit. And they've had opportunities before where they've, invented an animal or made a created animal. But the thing that makes this the next level, that pushes it along the progression, is this idea that they had to use evidence to support why they made the animal the way they made it. And as you can see, they're just these super creative animals. And we had a little bit of extra fun getting some feedback from a real scientist. So, yeah, thanks for listening. Usually
So much.
Well, you can come back, your recess and work.
Used to be the poet. Sarah's mother was the first mother. No, Sarah. I was just like that. I see Ann Pillion used to go there and people would say, her daughter, my pharmacist, my pharmacist.
She made a motion to, she calls me to order. Yes, now we're. What happened to we said yes.
Well,
Changing order. Okay, all I got was the change in order.
Yeah, and then,
So then we approved the.
yeah, then we did this. And then we voted.
Then she called me to order, it was supposed to be 7 p.m. Then he made a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, we did that, we did this because we had no longer.
So your meeting will be done.
Yeah, we adjourned, so our regular scheduled meeting, a little bit goofy there, we went into recess, we realized after the annual district meeting, this board isn't disbanded, so, as is usual every year. So we couldn't go back into a regular business meeting because we'd no longer be board until after the elections on Tuesday next week. 14th. So after the elections, then there'll be a new board. So we couldn't conduct business after the end of the district meeting. I apologize for that.
So all the other stuff.
All the other stuff will be for the next board to deal with. We did it quick. Do you need a microphone?
Can you try that one, please? I didn't know that was.
Check 1, 2.
There we go.
We have two, the second one isn't working, so sorry, it'll be like past the mic tonight.
Okay. Oh, I'm waiting for a countdown. Is it officially 7 o'clock? All right, terrific. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sasha Tracy, for those of you that don't know me. And tonight I'm here in the capacity as your meeting moderator. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Jackson School District annual meeting. Thanks to all of you for coming out to participate in local government. If you didn't hear, we have one microphone, so I just ask for your patience. We will pass this around, and if you can't hear in the back, you could just give me a nod. I think you should be able to. And now I'd like to ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, so on a light note, I just was curious if anyone else noticed the font shrinking here. That might be my eyes, so I'll do my best to read for you. It's my oath tonight as your elected moderator to be impartial and ensure a fair and equitable public meeting. As we get started, there are a couple of points of order I'd like to remind you of, and just sort of guidelines as you contribute to the conversation tonight. So the first one is that everyone that's here tonight is welcome to speak. I would ask that before you do it, even if you think everyone in this room knows you, please state your full name for the minutes. Please keep your comments to a reasonable amount of time, recognizing there's a lot of us who might want to contribute tonight. And please state in your introduction if you are not a resident of the town of Jackson. The second point is just to ask you if you've spoken on a particular topic. I know many of you are passionate about a number of the warrants here and the school in general, but please allow the voice to pass around the room before you make a second comment on each of the topics as we move forward. And then finally, I think that this is a really lovely community and we've been able to agree and disagree on a lot of things in this room, but just a reminder about civility, that we're all members of the same community, even if we might not share the same point of view on matters this evening. As the first order of business, I'd like to ask for a motion to dispense with the reading of the checklist. Could you state your name and for the minutes? Thank you very much.
Jerry Godfrey, Jackson.
Beautiful. A second?
Scott Jackson.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Wonderful. Second, I'd like to ask for, oh, we got that one already. All right. Oh, a motion to dispense with the reading of the full warrants, as we'll review them and consider each item individually. Is there a motion? Thanks, Jerry. And a second? Thanks, Tim. Wonderful. All right, so the first motion before you, Article 1, is to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,104,417 for the support of schools, for the payment of salaries for school district officials and agents, and for the payment of the statutory obligations of the district, with $21,812 offsetting this amount from various grants. This article does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles, and it is supported unanimously by the school board. Is there a motion on Article 1?
So moved.
And a second?
Second, Peter Benson.
Peter Benson. Thanks, Peter. And now the floor is open for discussion. All right, see, oh, go ahead, Peter. Are you coming?
I'll come. You want me to
No,
talk?
go ahead. You can just look at
Thank you, moderator and school board. My usual statement that I try.
Excuse me, could we have the mic?
Yep,
You
sure.
want me to have the microphone? Awesome. Thanks. The Jackson community and its residents, I think, do a great job in supporting the schools at all levels, and we will continue to do so. A quality education we realize is expensive, especially in a small community, and Jackson has always stepped up to support the school to a very high degree. But every community has its limits, and I believe, as do some others, that parts of this budget and the overall proposed increases have exceeded these limits. Frankly, this is not a reasonable or responsible budget from the administration and the school board. I understand that many of these increases, such as special education, tuition, to Bartlett McKenna, health insurance increases are unavoidable and are statutory in nature. These cost increases are significant this year. That being said, a responsible and prudent budget would seek to offset these increases with some other areas of decreases, or where the budget would at least remain flat. Instead, the board and administration are proposing other increases that are added to on top of the increases that we are obligated to provide. That is not responsible budgeting. And when faced with a 12.5% increase and another $100,000 in requests for special articles, for a total of $442,000 in added budget costs for this community, I don't think that's sustainable. And I feel that the board is going to price this community out of school in the near future, especially with increasing costs and potential declining enrollment in just over the next several years. By the school's census projections, we could be below 30 students in just a few years. Many of the costs that can be controlled are driven by proposed increased staffing, which continues to baffle me. Last year, the stated need was for a full-time nurse. It did not go, and we made it work with contracted services. This year, the proposal for a full-time library media specialist is embedded in the overall budget. And just as an aside, I would suggest that any time a new position is proposed, it should be broken out of the budget, not buried in there. It was really hard to find out where all the costs were. This is coming from a tech coordinator and contracted position with the Jackson Public Library, which by all accounts worked very well. The total for those two services was $27,800. Again, costly, but the price of a quality education in a small community, and the wonderful use of our community resources. But now there's a proposal for a full-time tech and library media specialist for a total cost of $92,296, as best as I can pull out of the budget. Salary, insurance, FICA, retirement, and other associated costs would be adding another full-time employee. Jackson Grammar now has 12 full-time equivalent instructional staff, not including maintenance, custodial, transportation, and other consultants and contractors, and want to add a 13th. This is better than a 1-to-4 ratio of instructors to students, which is unheard of even in other small school districts. Nowhere else does a school this size have a full-time specialist, as many full-time specialists as we do. It is simply not sustainable, especially with projected declining enrollments and with a system in place that works well. We have part-time in 6 other positions that seem to work well. We also have a new principal coming on board, I guess just as of 10 minutes ago, and a new librarian at the Jackson Public Library that need time to work together and provide provide these services. Again, for a small school, we need to get creative and resourceful, not simply add more staff. Also, we've heard about the need for more space at the school, and proposed addition last year was shelved. Part of the challenge with space issues at the Graham School is that we keep adding full-time specialty staff that all need dedicated workspace. Again, this doesn't make sense to me. If we are running out of space, we keep adding staff that need more space. When I was a school board member, we always looked at the needs, not necessarily the wants of the school, in relation to the ability of the community to pay for it. We've always tried to balance increases with savings elsewhere, but once again, this year that does not seem to be the case. Sorry. The $442,000 increase is simply too much for the community, even Jackson has its limits. And believe it or not, this is a community where some are on a tight budget and are challenged to pay their taxes. I'm sympathetic to both sides, and I will make a motion to reduce the operating budget by $64,496. This is the difference between the proposed new media library specialist at $92,296, offset with the tech coordinator services and the contract with the Jackson Public Library that we have at $27,800. This decrease, like last year's, will not affect any current staff or compensation packages, despite what was rumored. This is not the time for another staff increase. Faced with the other budget increases, costs, limited space at the school, and future declining enrollment. We're a smart, innovative community that supports education with dedicated professionals and educators, and we should be able to work together to continue to provide the highest quality education in Jackson. We don't want to price ourselves out of school in a few years. Thank you.
Sasha, point of order. There's a motion on the floor that hasn't been seconded.
So we can allow for discussion of the first motion and then
There's
vote.
a motion on the floor that hasn't been seconded. So if that motion goes nowhere, it wasn't seconded.
Peter, would you clarify, were you making a motion or
I
at
was
some
going
point
to make,
you were
I did
going to
not
make a
make a
motion?
motion.
Oh, you haven't made a motion.
I haven't made a motion
Yeah.
I apologize.
because I wanted other people to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Clemens, and I have a question. I think it would be in this arena. What is the tuition for a Jackson Grammar School student here? I mean, what is the charge for a student, per student?
The per pupil cost
Yes.
is about $30,000.
And what is the state per pupil cost that they have? Is that somewhere in the vicinity of 18 or 20?
Yeah, around 20,000.
Right.
Elementary level.
So I just would like to point that factor out. And also, having students that have gone through Jackson Grammar School, I will agree with Mr. Benson that we do our due diligence in offering our students a very well-rounded education. But also, too, I have to say that with the cost of living what it is for all of us and the new increases in all of our daily lives, that to further extend it by putting in a new position and not going as we did last year, which as the superintendent or the principal, do you feel that the students were getting what they needed by the previous year in that category?
I would say yes, we were able to, with the support of the library personnel, provide them the essentials. What is lacking is that we don't have a certified media specialist to do the digital literacy and the technology pieces of the job. Meredith and Lycan have done a great job providing them with books. It does take longer for the kiddos to get dressed, and you've got 13 students to get their coats and hats and boots on and hike down the road, so the teachers don't get to their planning time because they're walking with the students to the library. So there are essential competencies in the state competency that we're supposed to be teaching the students in the media area that the students have not been getting. So that was one of the reasons why we were looking back in October, before we knew that Meg Murphy was the employee. We needed to hire a consultant to provide those qualifications to add to and work with our teaching staff and our technology person to do that. So we have been able to make it work.
Well, I think, speaking for myself, I just feel that if we made it work, I think we could do it again due to the climate and what is happening to all of our pocketbooks, just to put oil in our furnaces, gas in our cars to get our place of employment. If it worked, I think that postponing it even for another year would not be something that I would be opposed to. And again, you're talking about putting your boots on and going. My children went here in the 70s, and they did the same thing when they walked to the little library that we had here in the village. And I can say that with the 3 teachers that we had, and maybe 2 aides, they got a very good education, and there's probably some parents here whose children are 2nd generation and possibly even 3rd generation that went to our small grammar school. And I just feel that at some point, we have to consider the people that live here. And I think when you're paying $30,000 when the state average is 10, and plus another point of interest is that we are allowed to give our teachers free student access to our school from other towns, so they don't pay the $28,000. It's a convenience, I understand that fully.
Sarah, I did want to clarify that before, there was some miscommunication there. Kevin thought you were talking about our tuition costs to send our kids to Bartlett and or Kennett High School.
Okay.
And you're asking what we charge for students to attend our Jackson Grammar School. Tuition into Jackson Grammar School is $10,000 a year.
I think she might be asking per pupil cost.
Per pupil cost for a student at Jackson Grammar School.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
And so I'm saying to you, we also have 2 students that are tuitioned here, and they pay $10,000 as opposed to the $28,000 that we pay per student. And also, too, I've asked this every year, it seems, at the meeting. We have in our book that we have 47 students in our school, when in actuality, 43 of them are residents of the town of Jackson. 2 of them are students of teachers, and 2 of them are tuition students. And I feel in order to be transparent, I would appreciate it if you would put that in, because I do think that that inflates the number of students, and it's just a transparent obligation that I think that the school board should do. Thank you.
A comment towards our, I'm sorry, Sasha.
That's okay, go ahead.
Our policy for tuitioning students into Jackson Grammar School states that it will not add to the overall budget in the school. So if we didn't tuition any students in, our per pupil cost would only go up. So to look at it from the standpoint, to put tuitioning kids into the school and our cost per students into the same argument is a little bit of a fallacy in my mind, because again, if we didn't tuition kids in, our wouldn't go up much, but our per pupil cost would go up, not down, because as our policy states, tuitioning students into the building cannot add to our overall budget.
Excuse me. I'd like to address a couple of things. I'll hold it away. One is the salary increases, specifically the $100 salary increases that are being paid to the Unified Arts people and to the paraprofessionals. I can't understand why this is considered a fair increase compensation. I feel the Unified Arts teachers and the paraprofessionals do a stellar job, have displayed passion for the children. They have a longevity at our school. I see a lot of parents, myself included, whose kids went here a long time ago, and these are the same people who've been working here for a very long time doing a fabulous job. And the increases in compensation for the maintenance staff and the current full-time teachers seem to reflect a lack of appreciation for this other part-time staff. And looking toward the future of our town, it's exactly these part-time staff that we will be leaning on should we go into numbers such as potentially 26 children in 2027. That's what the numbers look like right now. And if people choose not to send their kids to the Jackson School, because now there'll be school options, it could even look bleaker. I don't want that to happen, but I just feel that there's something about a $100 increase that just doesn't work for me. It's $2 and something a day increase for these people. Also, in terms of the sign-on bonus, there is a $7,500 line item for a sign-on bonus. And last year, I think it was a $5,000 sign-on bonus. My recommendation is that this be changed to a moving stipend for a potential teacher who's moving into the area. If it's someone who's just moving from another local school because the school is closing in Conway, it doesn't make much sense to give them $7,500 sign-on bonus. It should just be for somebody, coming from out of town, in my opinion. So those are the two things that really affect, for me, the budget. And the other was a teaching principal, because with the declining population, I'm not sure why we didn't consider a teaching principal, as Gail had the reading portion of her principal position. Thank you.
I think we had a comment around here. Just pass it.
Hi, I'm Joe Delavala, I'm a resident, and could you explain for me what we would get from the full-time media specialist that we don't have now? Because I don't feel I really understand that fairly well. It sounded like there's a technical component we're missing right now that we would then gain from that position.
So, I'd like to just start by saying, in reference to Peter's comment, this has been a position that we've transparently talked about for 3 years now, and we have put this in our budget because we feel it meets the needs for our school. It's up to you folks here to decide what our overall budget number is. How we dispense of those funds will then be up to us because it's going into our if you can't hear me, let me know, I'll speak louder. So Gail will be able to explain to you, Joe, like many of the benefits that we'll be getting from this position. And it's one that we requested last year that the legislative body removed from our budget, and we dealt with it. I do thank Peter for putting some more thought into the number he's considering reducing the budget by, because that number won't affect us as much as reducing the budget by $100,000 did last year. And I would just like to say that the comment about enrollment that is being reduced, declining enrollment. I moved to this town in 1977, and as Peter said, this town's always supported the school very well. The school is the future of Jackson in my mind. I've heard since 1977, every single year I've heard the same story. What are we going to do when Jackson gets too small to justify a school? Well, every year our school's been fantastic, and it's welcomed new people into this town, and I believe it will into the future as well. And again, I've heard it every year. Every year I've lived in this town. The school's declining, we're going to have to shut it down. It seems to me that people, when they have their kids in school, aren't making that argument, but when their kids are no longer in school, they start making that argument. And I think that's unfortunate, because I believe the school is the future of the town of Jackson. Outlaw will never attract new families into the school, ever. And the hope for attracting new families into the school is by continuing to have a wonderful school. And our students here will be educated very well, regardless of the resources that we give them, because we have such an exceptional staff.
Thanks, Jerry.
And Gail, you might just take some time to explain
In direct answer to Joe's question, I know that some of the things that Meg has been doing at Conway L, things like developing a makerspace, doing some STEM activities for students, doing some coding online, which is computer programming types of activities, digital citizenship and citations, research skills and abilities. Kids are starting to explore virtual reality. We're looking into trying to get some interactive smart boards and then doing the professional development with the staff as to how to use them. Some of you saw Joan's work with the students that could be expanded by using the smart boards to communicate the scientists at NASA and, you know, doing the outreach. So those are the types of resources that a media specialist brings to the staff and works in collaboration with the staff to further enhance and moving towards 21st, 22nd century skills to get our kiddos ready for the future. Yeah.
So there's an article in front of you, Article 1, the proposed budget, and I just want to check in the room. You've heard from a number of voices. Are there any comments or questions that are different than some of what you've heard in the last 15 or 20 minutes?
I mean, sorry, I'm halfway there. I went. So I went to Jackson and was very happy as a student here long ago. And I've been thrilled with my daughter's experience here. I just want to point out that it is very logical for the per student cost to be high because there are so few students, but you still have to have an art teacher and a 4th grade teacher and a K1 teacher. So I just that would make sense. Like, no matter what we do, it's going to be more expensive per student because it's just, that's the math, I think. So, and then, yes, I really do agree that investing in education and having high quality programs potentially attracts more people to the school. So I mean, it's challenging, but I'm not, I guess I have another question really, and which is, you know, if the budget is approved at a different level, like if we deduct $250,000 from the proposed number, then will there be continuing conversation and debate about where that money would get taken away from, or how would that, like, for example, we've heard various ideas, like increasing some of the pay raises, decreasing, like taking away a position, which I actually love that my kids walk to the library, so I'm sort of like, I don't know. I mean, I just think, so I'm just confused about, so if we reduced the actual budget, how would we decide on what the numbers would then look like? Or what would be taken away and what would be added?
Jerry, do you want to comment on the
So it's a good question, and you know, our budget was reduced was $100,000 last year, $100,000 last year. That's in the control of the legislative body, all of us, and how it gets spent. Like, for instance, what Tish was talking about, some of those things weren't exactly what is the role of this body tonight, because once the budget is passed, then it's up to us to decide how it gets spent and dispersed. So that's the process of how it works in the operating budget. This portion of the warrant, that's why it's the first thing on the warrant, is so you vote on the total number, how it actually gets spent would then be up to the school board what they want to do. And I would also say that in regards to the conversation about declining enrollment, of course, if we go down to numbers that are below a certain number, we will have to make severe adjustments into how we provide education in Jackson. That's just a given. But I'd like to hope that by inspiring people to come here with a fantastic school, that'll never happen. It hasn't in my lifetime.
Hi, I'm Bill Terry, and I live in Jackson. The comment I wanted to make was that I think you provided the information that we really need to understand what the premium cost is for having local education. It's roughly about $10,000 a student. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's about $30,000.
Yeah, 30,000.
But it's, no, it's a difference.
Right.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
Rough.
You're correct.
Rough.
It was
Rough.
$10,000
It's roughly
for the
10.
state,
So
30,000.
we're talking about 40 plus students, maybe 420,000. I'm just using rough numbers. I'm not not going to hold everybody to the exact math. But what you're looking at is the difference between having a community that has a school versus a community that is lifeless. It doesn't have. It has to give everything away to some other town. We have to transport all our students elsewhere. every class. Your cost, $420,000, that's a premium. It's a premium cost, and it's because you have a small group of students in a school. And the expenses, I looked at the expenses, I've been in the financial business for a long time, I've done budgets all my life, many, many millions of dollars more than what's here. And you take a look and you say, okay, what are the expenses that would go away? Yeah, okay, you don't need a principal. There are a couple of specialist positions that we have to have statutorily that would not have to be replicated here. Okay, that's your $420,000. You can look at your numbers, you go through these line by line and find them. We all, you know, if you took the time, I did, I spent a few hours on it. And that's it. You came up, my number was somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000. So you came close. And then the question is, what are you willing to pay for your school? The difference to have a local school. You sell your heart for $420,000, half of which is paid by people who don't live here.
They gotta pay more.
Excuse me?
They gotta pay more.
That would be nice. You take a look at our community, and half the taxpayers in town don't live here. They don't use these services, and they aren't represented here because they can't vote in this forum.
Thank goodness.
And that's a good thing. I've lived in other places where we've had people who are worried about whether or not there's a $500 difference per student in a town where the taxes are about 3 times the level that they are here in this town. We pay a very low level of tax in this town.
It's gonna get low.
Let's take a look. You can go. Please. Would you like to speak?
No.
Go ahead.
We're going to keep the conversation focused
I'm
on
out.
this slide.
Please, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it if you didn't do that.
No, I am sorry.
Thank you all for keeping the conversation focused this way.
I guess my point is that Jackson's a wonderful community. That's why we live here. And it's not that expensive. I think we're down in the bottom 4 for grade tax in this community. And something we should be willing to take. And I'll just say that and I'm done. Thank you.
I'm going to call this back for a vote. I think we've heard a lot of impassioned contributions. There have been a lot of questions. I hope you gained the knowledge you needed, and you all have an opportunity to vote in this room tonight. So there's a motion on the table related to Article 1. I'm going to read it again quickly. It's to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,104,417 for the support of schools, for the payment of salaries, school district officials and agents, the payment of statutory obligations to the district, with $21,812 offsetting this amount from various grants. This has unanimous support of the school board. I'm going to ask for all those in favor, if you could respond verbally, but also raise your hand. Peter, do you have a question?
I was going to make a reduction motion.
Okay, can we vote on this motion first? Okay. All right.
Yeah, based on what I said before, not to drag this on. I'll make a motion to reduce the operating budget by $64,496 with a strong recommendation to the school board that they not fill the full-time library media specialist and use the existing services that we have. The bottom line for that operating budget would be $3,018,109.
Is there a second to Peter's motion? Second. Sarah, a second from Sarah. Any questions or discussion? We'll call for a vote on the amended motion. Melissa, could you read that back? Here, can you read that back, just in case? Make sure you
So, Mr. Benson made a motion to decrease the budget by $64,496 with a strong recommendation that the school board not have the media library specialist position, leaving the budget at $3,018,109.
Peter, is that correct? And there was a question.
Yeah, my name is Linda Terry, and I am the chair of the Board of Trustees at the library. And I just wanted to point out, we are absolutely thrilled that Meg Murphy is going to be our new librarian as of the first of the year. However, with all of those responsibilities, I don't believe she's going to be in a position to continue to serve as a media specialist on behalf of the school. We're going to be using her skills fully, and I just wanted to point that out. To the extent there needs to be a separate person performing some of those functions, a part-time person, we need to keep that in account.
Any other comments or questions before a vote?
We're voting on the amended amount.
We're voting on the amended amount, which is what Melissa just read back to you all. Is there anyone that needs to hear it again?
So for point of clarification, we're voting on the amendment, not on warrant article 1.
Right, correct, the amendment.
So we're not voting on the amended adjustment, we're voting on the reduction of 64,000 and change that. That's what we're voting on.
Correct, thanks. All those in favor of the budget reduction proposed, an aye, and if you could raise your hand, that would also be helpful. Aye. All those against?
No.
The motion fails. Which I believe brings us back to a vote on Article 1. Just checking in. Jerry's been doing this a real long time. So and all right. Does anyone need me to read Article 1 again? I assume you all have your yellow books. Great. So I'm going to call for a vote on Article 1. All those in favor, a raise of your hand and an aye. Aye. Thank you. All those opposed? Article 1 passes. Thank you, everyone, for the great discussion. That's going to take us to Article 2, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $25,000 to be added to the Capital Reserve Fund for special education, previously established for this purpose. This article is supported unanimously by the board. Their motion.
No.
Thank you, Chair. A second? Is that a second, Ann?
It is not.
It is not.
I mean, sure, I'll second. Sorry.
And discussion?
Yes, please, Ann Bennett. I would suggest a no vote on this $25,000 for the following reasons. I absolutely, can you hear me? I absolutely support a capital reserve. At this point, I believe, clarify if I'm wrong, is it $210,000 we have currently?
Correct.
Our target is $250,000. If a student moves in, the idea is to have some funds to offset the sometimes catastrophic impact on a town budget. The fact is, a significant portion of the $400,000 and some that was just approved have to do with additional special education costs this year, and so be it. It is incumbent upon us to provide those services. At the same time, $210,000 towards $250,000, well, sound fiscal management, I believe that we could this year not put an additional $25,000 into that fund. Let's pass over it this year, or at least reduce it to $10,000, and at some point we could realize an offset to this very significant increase in our budget for this year. So I am...
Are you making a motion, Ann?
Well, we've already had a motion. It's on the, so what I'm encouraging you is to vote no. Yep.
She was encouraging folks to vote no. No, no. Any other comments or points of discussion before I call for a vote?
Sasha, I would just like to comment towards Ann's comment about the no vote. So every year for the last, I think, 4 years, we've retained from the previous fiscal year's budget $25,000 with a specific intent to next September use that money to offset the taxes. So you've already spent the $25,000. In September of this year, we retained $25,000 plus of last year's fiscal budget with the sole intention of paying it into the capital reserve fund for special education. And it is a good point that, yes, a lot of the funding for the increase is in special education. That's for known expenditures. The capital reserve fund is specifically there for unknowns. And it's been recommended to us that we raise it to $250,000 to protect the taxpayer. Next September, we can give the money back and do nothing with it that you already actually put away to put into this capital reserve fund, or not. But I think the wise and prudent thing to do would be to use the money that we already put away for it towards that exact purpose. So, and that might get a little confusing to a lot of people, but, so, money that we didn't spend from last fiscal year, we can retain a certain amount of it, and every year for the last 4 years, we've been retaining at least $25,000 from unspent funds. What? 50. That's what we're retaining, but 25 of that has been specifically to put into the capital reserve fund. There's other reasons why we retain money, but in those discussions, I've always argued that we should keep another $25,000 to continue to grow our capital reserve fund for special education, thereby the impact on the taxes being as little as we possibly can. So from approved budgets, money unspent, we've taken $25,000 of that unspent money and applied it to the capital reserve fund.
So there's no tax effect.
And I think that's enough.
With all due respect, I understand what you're saying. I understand the $250,000 target. I understand that this is a very large percentage increase on our budget. We just had a long discussion about that. So we have a difference in point of view here. I'm just suggesting that in this year, for fiscal year 2023-24, we could do away with this $25,000 as an offset for some small portion of the increase in our budget. So we just disagree.
And can I clarify for just a second?
Yes,
were you
please.
making a comment or were you making a motion for a reduction by $15,000?
We are having a discussion.
Okay.
Hi, just a quick question. On the capital reserve funds, I saw that we have a statement here of dollars here, but I don't see anything that shows the exact amount of the capital reserve funds, specifically what the current balances are. And that, I didn't find that here. Is that something, I mean, you quoted that you have a certain amount, someone pulled that number from somewhere. But it's not here?
No, and every year we should put that in, you're absolutely right.
And I just make, the comment I'd make is that it would be very helpful to any of these discussions if you provided that information so that we could understand exactly what I think, Jerry, what you said, is this is how much we have, this is how much we've used, this is how much we've retained, and have a better discussion about it. Thank you.
That's a really good point. And so when we have our initial discussions about the capital reserve funds, it's always, the balance is always given to us. We just never got to this point. And we really should.
Please share.
It's also on the
Thank you.
handouts.
So we're going to move to a vote on Article 2 to see if the school district will raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be added to the capital reserve fund for special education previously established for this purpose. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The article passes. Thank you. Next is Article 3, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 to be added to the Whitney Maintenance Trust Fund previously established for this purpose in 2010. This article is supported unanimously by the school board. Is there a motion? Thank you, Jerry. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Tony. Any discussion, comments, or questions?
Sarah Clemens, Jackson resident. Could you tell us what is in that fund, or is it in the book and I missed it?
$52,031.
And that money, is that a wash, Jerry? I think that it all comes from the Whitney Charitable Trust. So actually the school gets the money and then the school from the charitable trust and then puts it into the capital reserve fund. So It doesn't cost the school budget anything, really.
Again, it's, in retrospect, yes. So like, when you're going backwards, it doesn't in our current fiscal year. It comes out of taxpayers, but any money that's not spent, $3,000 of that would go towards applying that, because that comes in as revenue. So when we appropriate it here, technically it's being taxed for. It's money we recover from the Whitney Trust Fund. So the contract that we have with Whitney Foundation stipulates we receive proceeds from the Whitney Fund in the New Hampshire Charitable Trust, and we're to divide that up into 3 categories as we see fit. One is maintenance of the building, capital reserve maintenance of the building. So that money there, as Tish says, yes, we do get it. It doesn't get applied to the current fiscal year next year. But it happens every year. So it is a wash, yes. It's just the easy way to say it's correct.
Okay. Any other clarifying comments or questions? Wonderful. I'm going to call for a vote on Article 3 to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate $3,000 to be added to the Whitney Maintenance Trust Fund. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The article passes. We're on to Article 4 to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $75,000 for the purpose of the design, purchase, and installation of playground equipment. This is unanimously supported by the school board. This appropriation is in addition to the warrant article operating budget things passed earlier this evening.
So moved.
Thank you, Jerry. And a second? Susan? Any discussion, questions, comments?
Emily Benson, I'm a resident here in Jackson. So first of all, I want to thank the Playground Committee for all the work that you guys did putting together that presentation. It was super helpful. I did view it online. I was sorry I couldn't attend the actual meeting. I was just curious about a couple things. First of all, it sounds like there is some possible construction that will be happening around the building at some point. And if you could just clarify how you're going to accommodate that with the playground, that would be done. There is some old playground equipment that was used here, I don't even know how many years ago, but preschool-sized equipment wasn't used too long. That is still in storage at the grazing garage. I'm curious if you all had looked at that, considered that at all. And then finally, I was really curious as I spoke with our 2 kids who went through the grammar school and have such fond memories of going down into the stream and into the woods and into the rocks. Not so much on the play sets, if any sort of natural playscape design was considered. So did you get those 3 questions?
Is there a representative from the board or the playground committee that would like to answer these questions?
I'm the member of the playground committee, and I'm going to punt it off to Christina in a moment, but just to say, yes, Emily, we did look at a number of different things, different ideas, and it started as a kernel of we needed some ADA, accessible, appropriate play structures for kids with different abilities and different sizes. And so we started really small, and then if you look at our equipment, you'll see that there's peeling plastic and rust, and it's very aged. So yes, we also considered possible expansion, so we compared the plans that we had presented a few years back as to the square footage, and we'll need to shift the playground back a little bit to be out of the way. In the event at some point there's ever a building proposal, we would make sure that it's far enough away to allow for that. And there'll have to be some surveys and some groundwork that will be done with that. But the ultimate vision, and Christina can talk a little bit more about it, we are very fortunate that one of our parents happens to be a landscape architect, and we kind of have roped her in to help us. And so she's familiar with all of the permitting and the site work and things of that nature that would need to happen. But this is a kernel, 75,000 is more or less a kernel amount to get us started. We're still going to want and need parents in a community build and some fundraising to incorporate the whole vision of more natural playgrounds, walking paths, other types of reading stations, and a number of things that we'll be working with the parent and the community to do a vision of what the whole property should be involved with. And I don't know how well I'm covering that, Christina, but you're the expert if you want to just share a little bit of the committee's thinking.
Sure. Thanks. So it's really exciting. I think I can project. Yeah. It's really exciting to be part of this project. You know, this amount of money is a small amount. This is just the basics to replace the equipment that's here. But as you pointed out, we need to do a larger vision plan to understand the building expansion that could happen in the future, to understand the constraints of the wetlands here, and to provide more accessible structures. And this is all really important. We know our culture in Jackson is very much part of the natural world, and we want to retain that. So this part of this project, the $75,000, is really about play equipment. What I hope to work with the community with is to do a larger plan to look at how we use the rest of the property, how we work with Tin Mountain to bring in those educational programs that they are currently doing, because the stream is great, you know, and the woods are fabulous, and they have a great outdoor classroom already in the woods. But we want to work to make sure that we're looking at all the resources that are on this property, and we're using them appropriately. And that's appropriate to our context and how we might use them. So we will go through a process of looking at things on a schematic level of how much we can do here, but really this is, you know, that playground money is really just that seed money to start the process.
Thanks, Christina. Thank you, Gail. Okay, so I'll come and ask Jessica.
What?
Good evening. Hi, I'm Jessica Lavala, I'm a resident. Just a few follow-up questions for you. I did read the minutes from the February 2nd meeting where I think you presented, and what I'm wondering, it was hard for me to parse out everything, but I'm wondering is, can this project stand alone if we don't go to any other phases? Are we committing to a long-term project, and what's the ultimate cost, if we know it, that we're committing to? Because in those minutes it says that there was phase 1 discussed this evening. So do we commit to like 4 more phases if we commit to this first phase? And there was talk of a cost model spreadsheet, and you encouraged the school to do a vision plan and a master plan. And I'm just wondering, has that work been done? And does it make sense to be committing to this now if that hasn't been done? And I'm sorry if you've already spoken to this. It's very difficult for me to get to these meetings.
No, that's okay. That actually, no, you bring up a really good point. So there is a lot of grant money out there for playground, specifically playgrounds. So when we talk about the additional phases, we're really looking for in-kind donations. We're looking for grant monies, and I anticipate that each of these little projects that we envision in the vision plan can be peeled off these discrete projects, and we'll have time to fundraise for them. So the playground project and the structures is a standalone project, and it will be successful and will succeed just in replacing the structures and doing the surfacing around the equipment. So it is. And that includes site work, which there's some drainage work that does need to occur here also.
And am I remembering correctly, Jerry, that we've had this equipment since you were here, or you helped build it back right around the time?
The swing's not older than me.
And I'm just asking that because it's been a bit since I've been on it, and I am wondering what prompted this, because I know that's a question people have, is what is it, part of it is the safety issue, correct?
Well,
and ADA accessibility?
Before we came forward with a building addition, the playground committee had, another playground committee was formed back in, I don't know, must have been 2011. She says, don't call on me. But it was like 2011, Dexter Harding and some of the older board members, former board members were part of that. We stopped our work when the building project proposal began to be considered because we realized that we might end up having to move the playground to accommodate for the new building, and so we decided to wait. As you know, the board has decided to table the building addition for now, but the playground equipment can't wait any longer. It's getting to be a safety concern, and it's requiring constant maintenance and sanding and things to keep it safe for the kids. So it just can't wait any longer.
Thank you, Gail.
Yes. Just so I'm clear, because I've heard a couple of things. I heard that this was seed for a project that was phase one, but the article is very clear, and it says for the purpose of design, purchase, and installation of the playground equipment. So I don't anticipate or hope that we'll see another warrant article next year to finish phase two of the playground equipment. That everything else will be either in-kind, grants, donations, because what I heard and we're voting on sounded like two different things to me.
What the cost analysis that we did, Peter, was based on just replacing the equipment we currently have, 4-slot swing, a climbing structure with a slide or two. That's what we're asking the taxpayers to fund at this time, and the excavation and the bark mulch and other parts of it. So it's just replacing what we currently have. We have, a lot of people have some wonderful ideas about natural playgrounds and obstacle courses and other things that they would like to see included, but that, I think Christina was talking about, looking for fundraising and in-kind to expand the vision, but at minimum, we have to replace what we have on the property for the kids to use now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a point of clarification, can you talk about the timeline, your sort of calendar of installation, knowing that these funds would need to be expended in fiscal year 23-24?
So we talked about that extensively during our board meetings, and that is in consideration. Obviously, it would need to be spent in the fiscal year. Anything that wasn't by contract, anything by contract can be spent into further years as well. So the money could be used for that ostensibly.
If you click on the link that's now on the website, there is a page on there that details a timeline with dates from starting from now, right after the meeting, assuming it gets passed, and then going into the summer and the fall and what we would do then, and then the ultimate build in the spring of next year. But it's all detailed out with the cost analysis in that presentation.
Great.
Thank you, Gail. We've had great discussion on Article 4, and I'm going to move this to a vote. So we have a motion and a second for Article 4, which is to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $75,000 for the purpose of the design, purchase, and installation of the playground equipment. Thank you, playground committee members, for the background. This is supported unanimously by the school board. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. And those opposed? The article passes. Thank you all. And the final article tonight, which is just worded in such a funny way, to transact any other business that may legally come before this meeting. So I'm looking for a motion to confirm that there is no other business to come before this meeting tonight. Peter and Jerry? Thank you. Peter?
I would just like to make a comment. You can't vote on any money articles, but I would like to make a comment if that's possible.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with controversy. I mean,
I just want to say thank you to the school board and the staff. I mean, it's great that we can dialogue and have our differences, and at the end of the day, we can hold our heads high. That's what democracy is all about. I do want to point out, though, that this is a body of 5 school board members, and I think it's, unless there's some emergencies that I'm unaware of, or there are emergencies, I think it's really shameful that 2 school board members, or 40% of the voting body, isn't here tonight at the annual school district meeting. You guys are here. Thank you. I appreciate it. As an elected official, the annual meeting is job one. And for 2 of the 5 people not to be here, especially voting on new principal tonight at the meeting before this, I think that's really sad. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Sasha, I'd like to say something.
is, this is Gail's last meeting, school deliberative meeting, so I would like to thank Gail publicly in front of the town for years of service, putting up with the school board, community, really loving our children and our staff and our community, and doing the best that she can with everybody that she has to continue making this the little school with the big heart. So I am sad to see her move on. I'm happy for her next endeavors, and I thank you for everything that you've done for us. Thank you.
I'd just like to say thank you back to all of you. It's been a real pleasure to end, as I said in my letter, a 45-year career. This has been a wonderful community to be part of. And I have loved your children, and we'll miss all of them the most. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gail. We need to dissolve this meeting tonight, but before we do, a thank you to all of you. I've stood in this role for a couple of years, and one of the challenges on this night has been the community wanting more information. And I just want to nod to these folks. They not only worked really hard this year, but they made more information available online, and encourage you all to continue to check back with the SAU website, because they're creating presentations and timelines and budgets to try and get you information for tonight ahead of this meeting, so that you can come informed and ready to make a decision. And I just didn't want tonight to close without acknowledging that that's an extra level of work they've been doing, because folks in this room have asked for it. And with that, we're going to dissolve the meeting tonight. Can I have a motion to dissolve the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Jerry and Tim. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.